Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel, where real stories twist deeper than you'd ever expect. Let me take you into one. There was a flicker in her eyes when she saw me standing by the doorway. Not fear, not guilt, just annoyance. As if my presence was interrupting her moment. The party had been going for over an hour by the time I arrived. I wasn't late. I was forgotten. Nobody texted me the change in venue. I found out only because her friend posted a story on Instagram with a banner behind them that read, "Improv and ice cream. Marla's big 3-0. Dana was in the middle of the shot, wearing a dress I'd never seen before, sitting next to a guy whose hand was on her knee. By the time I got there, she was already holding court. The lights were warm, voices louder, and the air smelled like melted frosting and cheap wine. She was standing in the center of a loose crowd, tossing out jokes like darts, and all of them were landing straight in my direction. He once tried to fix a leaky faucet and flooded the kitchen, she laughed. Honestly, it's like being married to a sad Pinterest board. Everyone laughed. I didn't. I stayed by the doorway, unnoticed. She kept going. My husband still thinks buying me a notebook is romantic. I guess he believes love is organized in bullet points. More laughter. One guy clapped. Another whispered something in her ear that made her blush. She didn't know I was watching. That part hurt more than anything she'd said. She didn't know I was there, listening to her turn me into some sitcom punchline. The boring husband, the forgettable one, the man made of post-it notes and sad dinners. I could have confronted her right then, but I didn't. I didn't shout. I didn't slam anything. I walked. Just walked. No drama. No exit line. And that's what did it. Because the moment I stepped out of that room, the laughter stopped. Every smirk faded. Someone whispered, "Wait, was that him?" But I was already gone. She didn't come after me. But for the first time all night, she was speechless. Her jokes ended the moment I silently walked out of the party. I didn't drive home. I didn't even take my car. I walked 3 blocks in the wrong direction just to let the wind cool my face and clear my thoughts. My phone buzzed once. Then again. But I didn't check. I already knew who it was. And I knew whatever she had to say, it wouldn't come with an apology. Not yet. Dana didn't do remorse. She did spin. She did charm. She'd tell me it was just jokes, that I took things too seriously, that I always make everything about me. Maybe that's true. Maybe I am sensitive. Maybe I hold on to words longer than I should. But when the person you trust most turns you into a caricature in front of strangers, it does something to your chest. Like a tight string gets pulled just a little too far. By the time I made it to the 24-hour diner, I was numb. I slid into a booth and ordered coffee, not because I wanted it, but because I needed to be somewhere that didn't feel like a punchline. The waitress didn't ask questions. She just gave me refills and a kind smile, like she'd seen men like me before. I must have looked like someone who'd just been ghosted by their own spouse. Around 1:13 a.m., Dana finally called. I stared at the screen until it stopped ringing. No voicemail, just silence. I could picture her pacing, arms crossed, annoyed that I didn't make a scene, that I didn't give her the fight she was probably expecting. That's the thing about people like her. They thrive on reactions. They feed off tension, off the sound of someone defending themselves. But I gave her nothing, just silence. And silence, I've learned, is far scarier than shouting. She didn't come home that night. I didn't ask why. But in the morning, when I walked into our bedroom, I saw that her side of the bed hadn't been touched. Still perfectly made. I guess she needed time to rewrite the story in her head, turn me into the villain for walking away from her party. But the truth was already out there, hanging in the air between us. She joked, and I left. That's all it took. And deep down, I think she knew something had shifted. Something that couldn't be undone with a clever line or a nervous laugh. Dana walked through the door at 9:42 a.m., sunglasses on, no coffee in hand, which was strange for her. Normally she'd stop at her favorite cafe and post a photo of her oat milk latte like clockwork. This time, no Instagram story, no dramatic sigh, just quiet. She didn't say hello. She didn't ask where I'd been or why I left. She went straight upstairs, heels clicking softly across the hardwood, the sound so precise and hollow it made my stomach twist. I waited, sipping cold coffee, pretending to scroll through my phone, but every second was just thick, like I was trapped in a room filled with invisible fog. When she finally came back down, she'd changed. Not just her clothes, her face. The performance was starting. "You didn't have to leave like that," she said, not looking at me, pretending to straighten the books on the console table. My books. The ones she once laughed at for being too sad to be helpful. I didn't answer. I wanted to, but I knew that if I spoke, I'd say too much or not enough, and both would be wrong. She finally turned to face me. "You embarrassed me," she said. And just like that, I knew we weren't talking about what she'd done. We were talking about what I didn't do. Stay and swallow it. I should have asked her where she slept. I should have asked whose couch, or whose bed, or whose arms she cried into, if she cried at all. But I didn't. Instead, I just walked past her and went upstairs, needing to be anywhere else. That's when I saw it. The dress. The mustard one she wore at the party. It was crumpled on the floor of our bathroom like a fallen flag. And next to it, her clutch. I don't know why I opened it. Maybe I was hoping for something normal. A receipt. A lipstick. Something that made me feel like I still knew her. But what I found instead was a photo, printed, not digital. A Polaroid. Her and a man I didn't recognize, leaning into each other at some rooftop bar, her lips pressed to his cheek. It wasn't from last night. The timestamp on the back said 2 weeks ago. In ink. Her handwriting. So it wasn't just the jokes. The party was never the beginning. It was just the first time I noticed the punchline had a face. And it wasn't mine. I kept staring at that photo like it might morph into someone else if I blinked enough. But the man in the picture stayed the same. Clean cut, dark hair, soft jawline. Expensive watch barely visible beneath a crisp sleeve. He looked comfortable with her. Familiar. And Dana? She looked weightless. Not like someone sneaking around. More like someone free. I slid the photo back into the clutch with trembling fingers, half hoping it would vanish and take the entire night with it. But the damage had already seeped into the floorboards. I sat on the edge of the tub for what felt like hours, the silence between us somehow louder than her voice ever was. Eventually, I went back downstairs. She was in the kitchen now, pretending to make toast. Just going through motions. "So are we going to talk?" she asked, barely glancing up. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't want to, but because I knew what I'd say would shatter whatever illusion she was still clinging to. I just placed the clutch on the counter beside her. She looked at it like it was radioactive. To her credit, she didn't pretend. Didn't ask, "What's that?" or feign surprise. She just sighed and finally looked me in the eye. "It's not what you think," she said, the classic starter to every lie ever told. I didn't say anything. She continued, her voice shifting into that practiced softness she used on customers at her boutique. "It was a work dinner. It got blurry. I didn't plan it. I could feel my fingers digging into the counter, not from anger, but from restraint. His name's Declan," she added. The name hit harder than I expected. I knew a Declan. I worked with a Declan. Or at least, I used to. He was a sales rep we partnered with on a few bookstore events last fall. I remembered him shaking my hand at one of those signings, complimenting Dana's taste in wine as they poured from the same bottle. That same charming smirk. That same casual, confident energy I never had. And suddenly it all made sense. The sudden uptick in late meetings. The overnight girls' weekends. The shift in perfume. It wasn't random. It was Declan. The joke wasn't just on me. It was me. I didn't confront Declan right away. Not because I was afraid, though if I'm being honest, maybe part of me was, but because I wanted to know how deep it went. I needed to understand if this was a mistake, as she claimed, or something far worse. So I did something I never thought I would. I logged into Dana's old iPad, the one she stopped using when she switched to a newer model. She never logged out of her accounts. Never imagined I'd be the kind of man who'd look. She once told me that trust was our foundation, that if I ever snooped, we were already broken. Well, maybe we were. I didn't expect to find much. Maybe a few messages. Maybe proof of one drunken night. What I found instead was an entire folder in her photo app labeled Thursday. Dozens of photos, some blurry, some not, from different rooftops, different outfits, but always the same man beside her. Always Declan. In one, he had his arm around her waist, a champagne flute in her hand. In another, she was holding his face like she was memorizing it. But what really broke me wasn't a photo. It was a voice memo. It started with laughter, hers. Then his voice, calm and clear. "You ever think about what it'd be like? You and me, without him in the way?" Her reply came without hesitation. Every week. There was a pause, a breath, then her voice dropped into a whisper. "But he's comfortable. Predictable. He folds my laundry. He wouldn't even know how to leave me properly. They laughed again. That line, he wouldn't even know how to leave me properly, cut deeper than I want to admit. I always thought I stayed because I was loyal, because I believed in us. But maybe I stayed because I didn't know how to go. I'd spent years trying to be her safe place, her calm, her anchor. I thought that was love. Turns out, to her, it was background noise. I played the recording 5 times. Not because I didn't understand it the first time, but because some part of me hoped it would hurt less the more I heard it. It didn't. I expected rage. That burning, cinematic kind. I imagined driving to Declan's place, pounding on his door, shouting loud enough to wake the street. But when the moment came, none of that happened. No fists, no shouting, just a steady, suffocating pressure in my chest like my lungs didn't belong to me anymore. I found his number on a saved contact in her email, marked with a fake company name. A cover. She really thought of everything. I texted him just 5 words. We need to talk. Tonight. He replied with a thumbs up. Not even words. A thumbs up. Like I was confirming a brunch reservation. I met him in the parking lot of an empty strip mall near the bookstore. Neutral ground. He arrived in a newer car than I expected. Sleek. Shiny. Like someone who didn't worry about budget dinners or coupons. He stepped out, hands in his pockets, looking half annoyed, half amused. Porter, he said, as if greeting an old friend, not the husband of the woman he'd been sneaking around with. Didn't think I'd hear from you personally. I said nothing, just stared. He waited for me to speak first, and when I didn't, he filled the silence with the worst possible thing he could have said. Look, man, it wasn't supposed to go that far. Supposed to. I felt something tilt inside me, like the ground under my feet had shifted a few inches left, but my body hadn't caught up. How far did it go? I asked, barely recognizing my own voice. He shrugged. Does it matter now? That shrug, that unbearable nonchalance. That was the moment I realized. He wasn't sorry. Not even close. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't guilty. To him, I was a speed bump on the road to something better. Or easier. I'm not going to hit you, I said slowly, which made him laugh. Good, he smirked. Would have been awkward. He turned to leave, like it was over. Like I'd gotten what I came for. But I wasn't done. She saved your photos, I added. All of them. Labeled. Thursday. That made him pause, just for a moment. Enough for me to see it. The crack. The first flicker of concern in his eyes. I didn't know what it meant yet, but it meant something. Because despite all the arrogance, all the smirking confidence, something told me Declan wasn't as untouchable as he wanted to seem. And Dana? She might have kept more than one secret. I wasn't planning to dig further. I truly wasn't. But when I saw Declan flinch at the word Thursday, something clicked. That wasn't guilt. That was panic. It wasn't about what he had done. It was about what she might have done without him knowing. That night, back at the house, Dana acted like everything was cooling off. She made pasta, poured a glass of red, set the table like we were playing house in the middle of a storm. Let's just move past this, she said casually. We both said things we regret. I hadn't said anything at all. That was the scariest part. She thought my silence meant surrender. After she went to bed, I opened the drawer she always said was hers alone. My mess zone, she called it. I'd never touched it. Out of respect, or maybe fear. But tonight, I didn't care. The drawer was full of the usual clutter, old receipts, tangled necklaces, a cracked compact mirror. But beneath it all, taped to the bottom panel, was a folded envelope. No name on the front. Inside, 2 things, a printed email and a key. The email was short. A message forwarded from someone named K.T. No last name, no subject line, just a reply chain confirming a rental agreement at a condo across town. A name I'd never heard of was listed as the primary resident. Declan wasn't mentioned once. But Dana was. She'd co-signed it. 2 months ago. It was set to begin the week after next. Which meant this wasn't just an affair. It was a plan. She was leaving. Quietly. Cleanly. Until I ruined the timing. I turned the key over in my hand. It was small, gold, and marked 42B. I didn't know if I should be angry or relieved. She wasn't moving in with Declan. That much was clear. So who the hell was KT? I took a photo of the lease, put everything back exactly as I found it, and sat on the edge of the bed watching her sleep. Peacefully. Like none of this was real. Like I didn't know what I knew. Maybe I didn't yet. But I was going to find out. And for once, she wasn't the only one keeping secrets. I didn't confront her right away. I waited, watched. Let her believe I was still paralyzed in the fog she'd left me in. And in that stillness, I saw everything clearly. Dana wasn't planning to leave me for Declan. She was planning to leave both of us. I followed the lease. Quietly. On a rainy Wednesday afternoon, I drove across town and stood in front of Unit 42B. I expected to find another man. Someone richer, smoother, maybe even older. But what I found was her. Dana. Already there. Alone. Rearranging books on a shelf that didn't belong to us. She didn't notice me watching through the cracked doorway. But then someone stepped out from the kitchen, a woman. Older. Graceful. Familiar in a way I couldn't place. Dana smiled at her, gently touched her hand, and said, "I didn't think I'd actually do it." The woman said nothing, just wrapped her in an embrace that looked final, yet freeing. I didn't go inside. I didn't knock. Instead, I left. Quietly. Again. Because what I realized in that moment is this. Not all betrayals are about someone else. Sometimes, people leave because they've already disappeared inside. Dana wasn't cheating for pleasure or escape. She was unraveling. And she didn't have the courage to tell me she was never coming back. The next day, she was gone. No note. No call. Just silence. But I didn't fall apart. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was shrinking. I felt like I could breathe. I started sleeping again. I cleared out the bathroom drawer. I replaced her mug with one that said "Start over." Cheesy, but it made me smile. And I started walking in the mornings, not to escape the house, but because I liked watching the world move again without needing to catch up. It's been 7 weeks. Declan never reached out again. I didn't chase answers I didn't need. Dana still hasn't spoken to me, and I've stopped wondering if she will. I think, somehow, she gave me a gift, the kind that comes wrapped in heartbreak but unfolds into clarity. To anyone still reading, thank you. And let me ask you something. What moment in history, personal or global, changed everything for you without warning? Drop it in the comments. Let's share those turning points. And don't forget, you're watching Reddit Confessions, where every story hides more than one truth. Until next time.